One more week closer to the start of the 2024-2025 Penn State wrestling season. And Greg, where on the list of big news does today's show rank? Because a lot of this information maybe we had, but there's a lot of information that has been confirmed today and yesterday that you've done a great job of writing over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We're talking about official weights for some of all of the roster for 24-25. So where is this in the big news-o-meter for Greg Pickel?
Yeah, it's about as high as it gets considering we're less than a month away from Penn State opening its 2024-2025 season. And of course, it's NCAA and Big Ten title defenses. And we now know who's going where. So if you've listened to the show over the last couple of months, you knew most of these things were in the works, or we thought most of these things were in the works in terms of Penn State moving some guys around weight-wise and how that could impact the Nittany Lions' projected starting lineup. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But we also now have the confirmed class of 2024. It was the number one group in the country, according to every online internet service, Mat Scouts, Intermat, and Flow Wrestling. And now it's here on campus, and it's going to have an impact in some ways, it's certainly in some ways, maybe in bigger ways than we expect, depending on how things shake out on the 2024-2025 season. So exciting time. As we all know, the NWCA All-Star Classic's an exhibition on the 16th of November, and then the first dual meet is the 17th against Drexel, and that will be our first chance to see some of how Penn State is going to look this year and what the plan is. I expect Cale Sanderson to speak with reporters earlier that week, so about 2 weeks from now, his first media event of the season. So we're gearing up, T. Frank. It's a fun time of year. We have college football in full swing. The NFL's in full spring. Of course, baseball is now wrapped up. You have hockey and basketball going on, college basketball, and of course, college wrestling's now on the horizon too. So fun time of year, and looking forward to getting into this as we kick off end October and kick off November.
You just broke some news to me because I'm so deep in the football submarine and the Penn State sports submarine that I didn't know. Like, is the World Series over? Is that what happened? Is that what you just said?
It is.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. So the Dodgers won?
The Dodgers won, yes.
All right. Breaking news for just one person here on the Penn State Wrestling Show. Let's move on to something people want to know about, which is the lineup changes that we're going to get to here and some of those battles coming up on the show in just a minute. We're going to start with the class of 2024, but before we get to that, please like and subscribe here to the Blue-White Illustrated YouTube channel. Like we said, the season is just a month away. Or less than a month away. We'll have all of Cale Sanders' press conferences that we are available for and that are available to us. And we'll also have a show a week all the way through the season. So this is just getting started from us. And hopefully you're along for the ride with us. But let's talk about that class 24 that's arriving. What are the names to know? And what are where are they landing on the lineup for Penn State?
Yeah, so first things first, unlike a season ago when Penn State brought in two transfers, Aaron and Bernie Truax as part of its class of 2023, so to speak. There are no transfer portal additions, guys who are coming from the high school ranks or the prep ranks, however you want to put it, to fill out the rest of its roster with some guys moving on. So obviously the first place to start is also the first spot most dual meets start, 125 pounds. You have Wyoming Seminary star. He's done it all, folk style, freestyle. There's not much he has not won at this point. Luke Littledahl, who's a Missouri native and wrestled at Wyoming Seminary in Pennsylvania, is sort of the star of this. Is the star of this class. And there's some other big team. You could make some arguments, I'm sure, on some other guys being in that same category as him. But in terms of the guy who's going to come in as a true freshman and almost certainly have a starting job, it's Luke Littledahl. He's going to man 125 for Penn State. Again, he has done just about everything one can do at the pre-college level, both internationally and nationally. So it's exciting. There are a lot of good 125-pounders back across the country and also some guys that are coming back to the lineup after Olympic red shirts and things like that. So his competition will be stiff, but he's going to be ready for it. And Penn State fans, I think, from the moment, they call him Lightning Luke for a reason. And if you're a longtime Penn State wrestling follower, you know what that means. It's aggression, it's scoring points, it's dictating the action and the pace of a match. He does all of that extremely well. So he is a guy that Penn State and its fans have been waiting to get on campus for quite some time. He's here now, and he's looking like the starter for Penn State at 125 pounds. So that Drexel dual meet in however many days it is, I think 16, 15, something like that, 3 weeks' time, less than that, is going to be a good chance in almost all certainty to see him on the mat. and he's the guy that really stands out in this class, T. Frank. A couple other lightweights to get to. PA native Cal Nesdeo, who was the Class 3A champ in Pennsylvania at 121 pounds last season. He's going to start his career at 133 pounds. You got Hayden Cunningham from State College, the son of Casey Cunningham. Of course, he is going to start at 141, former placer at 127 at PAA States. Jersey Shore's Brock Weiss, who's a two-time district champ and a one-time state placer, is going to start his career at 141 as well for the Lions. And then the first half conversation in this class of 2024, Center Hall's Ty Watson, who's a three-time state placer at Penns Valley. He wrestled 152 in high school, is going to start his time at Penn State at 157. So when we look at that first half of the lineup, so to speak, 125 through 157, again, Lillidahl's the guy that is the standout there. He's the guy that's going to see the starting lineup for Penn State this season, like we said, in all likelihood. But when you look at the group overall, Penn State brought another solid group of mostly, but not all, PA natives in that part of the first five weight classes in with this recruiting class.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of not just PA, but local to Center County wrestlers that they have here on the list. What's the next half? Because I know there's some other names that Penn State wrestling fans should know and are well aware of, but where did they land on the lineup for Penn State? Because I know Zach Ryder, Connor Mirasolo, part of this conversation of freshmen who have a chance to at least battle for some sort of spot on, however they might contribute so far this year.
Yeah, no doubt. So that's why I put all these guys, and Connor Mirasolo may be a different case. We'll have to wait and see. But just one step below Lillidahl, even though in terms of accomplishments, they're all right there with him. I just am not convinced all of these or any of these guys are going to see the mat this season. But Joe Seeley, he's a Bear Creek Township guy who wrestled, won 2 national prep titles at Wyoming Seminary, one of the top prep wrestlers in the country in the class of 2024. He starts his time at Penn State at 165. Of course, we'll be behind Mitchell Messenbrink there. We'll talk about him in a minute. He recently had some final international success before the college season starts. You mentioned Zach Ryder, 4-time New York State champ, and he didn't wrestle as a senior, T. Frank, which means he won his first state championship as an 8th grader, which is insanely impressive. He took the Levi Haynes route and the route of some guys, before him, and wrestled and trained at M2 training in State College as a senior. So he comes in off of plenty of international success. He was a U20 world medalist at 180. I actually don't have those kilograms in front of me, but anyway, he's going to start at 184 pounds, maybe a little bit bigger than I thought, but he's a big kid, and he will factor into the conversation next year at that weight once Carter Starace, of course, moves on following his quest for to become the first 5-time national champ. Then you talk about the Mirasolo twins, Connor and Cole. Connor's a 4-time Wisconsin State champ. He's going to start his time at Penn State at 197. And he's going to factor potentially into what we're going to get into later, the starting spot battle at 197. It is a weight where he is obviously the youngest guy in the room who will compete for that job, but it's the guys that are here do not have much more in the way of a college resume than Mirasolo does. Connor Mirasolo does. So can he find his way to the mat, or will he redshirt? My hunch is that he's going to redshirt, but time will tell. Again, we'll get into that in a little bit. And then 2 heavyweights, which I think is really important, because when you look at this room, T. Frank, the heavyweight depth after Greg Kirkvliet is, I don't want to say it's non-existent, but there's not much there. You have A.J. Friccione, who's a guy who bounced around up there. Lucas Cochran, I think, is probably not someone who should be wrestling heavyweight unless it's a dire situation. So you get 2 in this class to restock the pipeline, so to speak. You get Cole Mirasola, who's a 3-time Wisconsin State heavyweight champ. He, of course, is going to compete at 285 in the Penn State wrestling room. And then the one guy we had not known about previously is St. George, Utah native Dawson Bundy. He's a 3-time state placer in Utah, 2-time state champ. I believe his high school career ended a couple years ago. I'm not sure if he did a mission or what he did out in Utah before coming to the college ranks, but he's here now. And so he is a guy that, is probably a depth piece long term, but the success, that he had at the high school level is interesting, even though he's been away from the mat for a little bit. So Penn State gets in this class pretty much everything you could hope for. Potentially an answer to that long-standing can Penn State hit the top podium spot at 125 pounds question?
Yeah.
And then you get some depth in the heavyweight ranks as well, and stars up and down the weight classes too.
Yeah, was that I guess that it's funny I think nothing is above criticism, right? Like we can have conversations about the nuances of these things, but Penn State has been the best wrestling program in the country for 10 straight years. But it is interesting that has been a quirk that they have had that kind of situation at 125. So long term, do you feel like this can be the start of that run? Because in recruiting and some of these things, it only takes one to then spark that long run of like getting the players and getting the athletes you need. So I guess do you think that this is obviously it's a good thing, but do you think it is a long-term sustainable thing at 125?
Yeah, let me answer that question and roll us into the next conversation we're going to have, which is weight changes. I think that Luke Lillidahl could be Penn State's long-term answer at 125, but let's roll the conversation forward to roll it back to then roll it forward. Braden Davis came to Penn State and started his career at 125 pounds, was the Big Ten champ there last year, did not hit the All-American podium, but he's bumping up to 133, as we've talked about here on the Blue-White Illustrated Penn State Wrestling Show, and so that's just a reminder that even though a guy doesn't maybe look like he could bump weights or add weight when he gets here, by the time his first season is over, it's possible that he no longer is able to handle 125. So we'll see if Lillidahl ends up finding himself in the same boat. But I would say this, certainly whatever Penn State can get out of him this year, and I don't want to overhype him, but I certainly think it can be a lot, they'll take it and then move on to whatever they have to deal with next year, of course. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. But yeah, let's get into the weight changes, T. Frank. We've covered a lot of them here on the show, but there's plenty of them to get to.
Yeah. So just which one, we don't have to go in order. Which one do you think is the most important in terms of the outlook? Carter Starachi, that one we've talked about quite a bit. He's going to 184. Was there maybe a surprise one or one that you think is an underrated move so far to start?
Yeah, I think the one that everyone's going to talk about is Alex Facundo, the former 165-pounder who took an Olympic red shirt last season. There was word that he had certified at 157 pounds, and that is where Penn State lists him on its 2024-2025 roster, which begs the question, what is Penn State going to do at that weight class? Is Facundo the guy? Is Tyler Kasak, last year's third-place finisher at 149 pounds, the Lions guy at 157? And there's some nuance, I think, to this conversation because Shane Van Ness is going to wrestle in the NWCA All-Star Classic, or at least he's listed to as we record this on the morning of October 31st. That event is, of course, November 16. He's coming off that lower body injury that cost him almost all of last season. We're approaching the 11-month mark of when that happened. So does he need to be, I guess you could say, eased back in? Will Penn State do some kind of back and forth with him and Van Ness and Kasak and Van Ness at 149 to start the year and then have a competition for 157? Or is 157 Kasak's job or is 157 Facundo's job? I think that's a really fascinating question at this point in time because Penn State lists Kasak as a guy who could go at either. Obviously, I think he wants his best competition weight and training weight is probably 157. But the fact they dropped Facundo down there is just a really interesting move and one that's been, I guess, hinted at, speculated about, so on and so forth. But it's now confirmed. So that's going to be a really interesting starting spot battle to watch. 133, we talked about Braden Davis moving up to challenge Aaron Nagel. All indications are that that's going to be Davis's spot, but certainly there's time to see how that plays out, but my inclination right now is that that's Davis's spot to lose. And then just again, Levi Haynes is going up to 174 from 157, where he won the NCAA championship a year ago. Big jump. You don't see guys make two weight class jumps all the time. But if you couldn't hold 157 and you're going to have Mitchell Messenbrink in your lineup at 165 and you have a hole at 174, that's how Levi Haynes ends up moving up. Now, whether, I'll be very interested to see when we talk to Cale Sanderson and possibly Levi Haynes a little bit, in a couple weeks. I'll be curious to see where he's walking around at. Is he close to 174? Is he more 170, 172, so on and so forth? So very interested to see where his walking around weight is as it relates to, this move up for him to 174. But, again, that's his job. Messenbrink at 165. He's a U23 bronze medalist, by the way. He just won that event, or won bronze at that event over in Albania. I believe it was last Saturday before Penn State, Wisconsin on the football field. So good offseason for Mitchell Messenbrink as he looks to take the top spot as the preseason number one seed at 165 pounds. So quickly, T. Frank, I want to get into the position starting battle. Yeah. I want to say position battles. It's a football term. It's the starting spot battles is what we're going for here.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad you make that mistake too as our wrestling reporter. that it is just like the nomenclature gets all confused in my head. So thank you for a little bit of that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I wrote position battle a couple times. Like, that's not right. That's not right. Starting spot battle is what we're going to go with. But good luck fitting that on the graphic, by the way. We'll have to figure out the best way to do that. It seems like too many. It seems like too many letters, but we'll get that. We'll get that out of the way after the show. So like we said, 133, I think it's Davis over Nagel there, but time will tell. 157 is interesting because, again, Facundo drops down. Does he beat Kasak for that job? How does things work at 49 and 57 with Van Ness coming back? Plenty of intrigue and things to watch there. And then the one true all up in the air toss-up in my mind comes at 197 pounds, and we hit on a little bit earlier in the show. But you have Lucas Cochran back. You have Josh Barr going up to 97 from 84. And you have Mirasola coming into the mix. So you have three guys, again, with, Cochran and Barr have some college resume, but it's not extensive. Mirasola, of course, has none. So who wins that job? And how does Penn State let it play out through the non-conference portion of the 2024-2025 schedule? I don't think we'll see all three of them, T. Frank, perhaps at the college collegiate wrestling duels, because you have 3 matches in one day, so maybe you see all 3 there. I don't know. And keep in mind, wrestling, like college football and basketball, has you can wrestle in, I believe it's up to 5 matches before using a year of eligibility with your 6. So you have some wiggle room to get guys experience without using a year of eligibility. So Penn State and Cale Sanderson have all the time in the world to let this play out. And I don't even know if I have a leader in the clubhouse at this point, and what the thing I would say to that end is that when the ranking services, the outlets, Matt Scouts, Intermat, Flow, when they're all ranking different guys, it tells you a lot about the uncertainty of that spot, who's going to hold it long term. And It's a realization, too, as we long talked about on this show and also at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, T. Frank, that Cale Sanderson and his staff are generally in no rush to decide these things. I think they prefer to have them decide it by the start of the Big Ten portion of the schedule, which is always in January. But if it got to go longer, it'll go longer. So fun couple of starting battles to watch. I almost did it again. Caught myself, though. Fun couple of starting spot battles to watch as we get into the true lead up to Penn State wrestling season.
Excited to follow along with you at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com or at Greg Pickel if you want to get his information and his insight in a written form. We'll be back once a week with a podcast. So the information, the news, and Greg never sleep. We'll make sure that he at least, we turn him off at some point and then boot him back up later in the day just to give him a time to cycle off and cycle back on. But Greg, excellent show as always. We'll be back with more next week again. Please like and subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel so you don't miss the Penn State Wrestling Show from Blue White Illustrated.